In a small town nestled between rolling hills and quiet streets lived a little girl named Lily Chen. From the moment she was born, Lily had never seen the world through her eyes. The doctors had explained to her parents that her optic nerves hadn't developed properly. While other children her age were pointing at colorful birds or chasing butterflies, Lily was discovering the world through touch, smell, and most importantly, through sound. The Chen family lived in a modest home at the edge of town. Lily's father worked as a mechanic, his hands always smelling of motor oil and metal. Her mother taught at the local elementary school, coming home each day with stories of her students. They weren't wealthy by any means, but their home was filled with love and patience. When Lily turned 5, her life changed forever. Her Aunt Rose, who lived in the city, couldn't keep her old upright piano when she moved to a smaller apartment. Rather than selling it, she offered it to the Chens. Lily's parents hesitated at first. They didn't have much space, and neither of them played music. But something told them to accept the gift. The day the piano arrived, Lily was immediately drawn to it. While the movers were still catching their breath from carrying the heavy instrument up the narrow staircase, Lily had already found her way to it, her small fingers exploring the smooth wooden exterior. "What is this?" she asked, her face lighting up with curiosity. "It's a piano, sweetheart," her mother explained, guiding Lily's hands to the keyboard. "It makes music when you press these keys." Lily pressed one key, then another. The sound filled their small living room, and something extraordinary happened. Lily smiled in a way her parents had never seen before. "It feels like yellow," she whispered, pressing a high note. Then, touching a lower key, she added, "And this one feels like deep blue." Her parents exchanged confused glances, not understanding what their daughter meant. They didn't know that Lily was experiencing something rare, a form of synesthesia that allowed her to see sounds as colors and textures in her mind. From that day forward, Lily was inseparable from the piano. She would spend hours just exploring different combinations of notes, creating her own melodies. Her tiny fingers would dance across the keys, sometimes hitting discordant notes, but more often finding harmonies that seemed impossible for a child with no training. Mrs. Lopez, their elderly neighbor who had taught music before retiring, heard Lily playing one afternoon while delivering homemade cookies. She stood in the doorway, listening with growing amazement. "How long has she been taking lessons?" Mrs. Lopez asked Lily's mother. "She hasn't had any lessons," her mother replied. "The piano arrived 3 weeks ago. She just plays." Mrs. Lopez approached the piano carefully, not wanting to startle Lily. "Hello there, young lady. That's beautiful music you're making." Lily turned toward the voice, her unseeing eyes seeming to look just past Mrs. Lopez's shoulder. "Thank you. The music helps me see things." That conversation led to Lily's first proper piano lessons. Mrs. Lopez offered to teach her, initially refusing payment, though the Chens insisted on giving her homemade meals and helping with her garden in exchange. Teaching Lily presented unique challenges. Traditional sheet music was useless to her. Instead, Mrs. Lopez would play a piece slowly, and Lily would listen intently, her head tilted slightly, before repeating it almost perfectly. Her memory for music was exceptional. "It's like the notes make a path in my mind," Lily explained once when Mrs. Lopez expressed amazement at her ability to remember complex pieces. "I just follow the colors and textures back to where we started." As word spread around town about the blind girl with the extraordinary gift, people would sometimes stop by just to listen. Lily's parents were protective, not wanting their daughter to become a spectacle, but they also recognized how much joy Lily found in sharing her music. By the time Lily was 7, she had outgrown Mrs. Lopez's teaching abilities. The old woman admitted this with a mixture of pride and sadness. "Your daughter needs a teacher who can challenge her," she told the Chens one evening. "Someone who understands classical training." The nearest qualified teacher was in a city 40 miles away. Mr. Chen calculated the cost, gas for the weekly trips, the teacher's fee, possibly a better piano as Lily advanced, and his heart sank. Their budget was already stretched thin. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, her parents sat at their kitchen table discussing options. They could take out a loan, or perhaps Mr. Chen could pick up weekend shifts at the garage. Whatever it took, they decided they would find a way. What they didn't know was that Lily was sitting at the top of the stairs listening to every word. The next morning, she approached her father during breakfast. "I don't need a new teacher," she said firmly. Mrs. Lopez is good, and I can learn from recordings too. Mr. Chen knelt down to his daughter's level. How did you know we were talking about this? I hear everything, Dad, she said with a small smile. My ears work extra hard because my eyes don't. He hugged her tightly. Don't you worry about any of this. If you love the piano, we'll make it happen. And they did. Mr. Chen took on extra repair jobs in the evenings. Mrs. Chen started tutoring students after school hours. They saved every penny they could. 6 months later, Lily had her first lesson with Professor Harold Wang, a retired concert pianist who had moved to the nearby city for a quieter life. Professor Wang was initially skeptical about teaching a blind child. He had a reputation for being demanding and strict, focusing on technical perfection, but after just one session with Lily, his doubts vanished. Your daughter doesn't just play the notes, he told the Chens afterward. She feels the music in a way that many trained musicians never achieve. Under Professor Wang's guidance, Lily began to learn proper technique while maintaining her intuitive connection to music. He introduced her to Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, and Chopin. For each composer, Lily described different colors and textures, creating her own visual world of music. Professor Wang also introduced Lily to a specialized tactile notation system developed for blind musicians. While she still learned primarily by ear, this system helped her understand music theory and composition more deeply. The sacrifices her parents made didn't go unnoticed by Lily. As she grew older and more aware of their financial situation, she insisted on contributing in her own way. By age 12, she was playing at local community events, small restaurants, and church gatherings. People would leave tips or make small donations, which Lily proudly contributed to her piano fund. Life wasn't always easy. There were children who teased her at school, calling her piano freak, or making cruel jokes about her blindness. There were days when Lily felt the weight of being different, when she longed to see the faces of her parents or the keys her fingers danced upon. During one particularly difficult week, after some girls had excluded her from a birthday party, Lily refused to practice. She sat in her room, arms crossed, face set in an uncharacteristic frown. I'm tired of being different, she told her mother. What's the point of playing music if I can't even make friends? Her mother sat beside her on the bed, taking Lily's hands in hers. Your music is special because you're different, not despite it. Those girls don't understand that yet. But someday people will listen to you play and understand things they never did before. That weekend, her father took her to a concert in the city. A famous orchestra was performing. During intermission, he managed to speak with one of the cellists, explaining about his daughter's passion for music. The kind musician invited them backstage after the show and let Lily touch his cello, explaining how it was different from her piano. Close your eyes, Lily told the cellist with innocent humor, not realizing what she was saying. Then, realizing her mistake, she burst into giggles. I mean, listen with your heart, not just your ears. The cellist did as instructed, and as Lily played a simple melody on his cello, an instrument she'd never touched before, he understood exactly what she meant. By 16, Lily had mastered pieces that conservatory students years older struggled with. Her bedroom wall was decorated with certificates and small trophies from local and regional competitions. Professor Wang, now in his 70s, often remarked that he was learning more from Lily than she was from him. You play Debussy as if you've walked through his dreams, he told her after she performed Clair de Lune during a lesson. I've studied his work for 50 years and you've shown me something new today. Lily's parents watched their daughter's growth with wonder and pride. The little girl who once described notes as colors had become a young woman who could translate the deepest human emotions through her music. Though she had never seen a sunset, her interpretation of Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony could make listeners feel the warming glow on their faces. Though she had never seen ocean waves, her rendering of Chopin's Ocean Etude made people feel the surge and retreat of the tide. What none of them knew was that Lily's private recordings, shared by Professor Wang with a few trusted colleagues, were beginning to circulate among serious music lovers. Her unique interpretations were catching attention in places far beyond their small town. A storm was brewing in Lily's future, one that would bring both harsh judgment and unprecedented opportunity. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, addressed to Miss Lily Chen in official-looking embossed print that Lily's mother traced with her fingertip before opening. The family rarely received mail beyond bills and the occasional postcard from Aunt Rose, who had since moved abroad. This envelope, heavy and cream-colored, felt important. "It's from the Willard International Music Competition," her mother said, her voice rising slightly as she scanned the contents. She paused, reading silently for a moment before letting out a small gasp. Lily sat perfectly still at the breakfast table, her half-eaten toast forgotten. At 17, she'd grown into a poised young woman with long dark hair that she kept neatly braided. Her unseeing eyes, which people often described as remarkably expressive, were wide with anticipation. "They've invited you to compete," her mother finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone submitted recordings of your playing, and the selection committee wants you to participate in the youth division next month." Professor Wang had mentioned the Willard competition during their lessons. It was held every 3 years in New York City, drawing talented young musicians from around the world. Many winners went on to prestigious conservatories or professional careers. It wasn't just any competition, it was the competition. But how? Lily asked, her fingers nervously tapping the edge of the table. "We never submitted any application." That evening, when Professor Wang arrived for their weekly lesson, the mystery was solved. The elderly teacher admitted that he had sent Lily's recordings to the competition committee. "I hope you'll forgive an old man's meddling," he said, the hint of a smile in his voice. "But talent like yours deserves a proper stage, not just our little town." Lily's parents exchanged worried glances over cups of tea. The competition would require travel expenses, hotel rooms, appropriate formal attire, costs they hadn't budgeted for. And beyond money, there were practical concerns. How would Lily navigate an unfamiliar city, a strange stage, the pressure of performing for severe judges? "I can't go," Lily announced suddenly, sensing the tension in the room. "It's too much trouble for everyone." Professor Wang tapped his cane sharply on the floor. "Nonsense. This is your moment, Lily. The world deserves to hear what you can do." "But the costs," her father began. "Which is why I've taken the liberty of speaking with the town council," Professor Wang interrupted. "They've agreed to sponsor you as a community representative. Your travel and accommodations will be covered." The news left everyone speechless until Lily broke into a smile so bright it seemed to light up the room. "Really? They'd do that for me?" "You've played at every town event for years," her mother reminded her. "The senior center, the library fundraiser, the memorial after the flood. You've given so much to this community." The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparation. The town truly rallied around their young musician. Mrs. Garcia from the dress shop altered a beautiful gown donated by the mayor's wife. The high school music department organized a benefit concert to raise additional funds for incidentals. Even Lily's classmates, many of whom had previously kept their distance, suddenly took pride in knowing her. Through it all, Lily practiced with a new intensity. Professor Wang pushed her harder than ever, sometimes keeping their lessons going for 3 or 4 hours. "The piece must breathe through you," he would say. "When you play Chopin, I should forget it's you sitting there. I should feel only Chopin's soul speaking." For her competition pieces, they selected a challenging program: Bach's Prelude and Fugue in D minor, Beethoven's Appassionata Sonata, and Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor, works that would showcase both technical prowess and emotional depth. As the departure date approached, Lily's excitement was tinged with growing anxiety. Late one night, her mother found her sitting at the piano, not playing, just running her fingers lightly over the keys. "What if I fail?" Lily whispered, not turning around. She'd always been able to sense when someone entered a room, the subtle shifts in air and sound giving them away. "What if everyone who's helped me feels like they wasted their effort?" Her mother sat beside her on the bench. "Do you remember what you told that cellist years ago? Listen with your heart, not just your ears. That's all anyone is asking of you, to play with your heart. Whether you win or not doesn't matter." The day before their departure, the entire town gathered for a send-off at the community center. People Lily had never even spoken to wished her luck. Children from the elementary school had made a banner that read, "Lily Chen, our musical star." The local newspaper took photos for a front-page story. Standing before them all, microphone in hand, Lily felt overwhelmed by their support. "I don't have the words to thank you all," she said simply, "so I'll play for you instead." She sat at the center's old upright piano and played Debussy's Clair de Lune, the piece that had first earned her Professor Wang's respect. The room fell completely silent. Many closed their eyes, transported by the delicate shimmering notes that seemed to paint moonlight across the simple room. When she finished, there wasn't immediate applause. Instead, there was a moment of collective held breath, as if no one wanted to break the spell. Then slowly the clapping began, growing until it filled the room. Mrs. Lopez, now using a walker and well into her 80s, wiped tears from her eyes. "You already won," she told Lily afterward, her papery hand squeezing Lily's. No matter what happens in New York. The flight to New York was Lily's first time on an airplane. She sat between her parents, one hand gripping her father's arm during takeoff, the other holding her mother's. Once they were in the air, she relaxed, fascinated by the experience. "It feels like we're sitting still and the world is moving beneath us," she observed. New York City assaulted Lily's senses the moment they stepped out of the airport. The cacophony of traffic, the multitude of voices speaking in different languages, the smells of street food and exhaust and perfume all mingled together. For someone whose senses were already heightened due to blindness, it was overwhelming. Their hotel was near Lincoln Center, where the competition would be held. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean and comfortable. The staff had been informed about Lily's needs and were exceptionally helpful, offering detailed verbal directions rather than simply pointing. The day before the competition, participants were allowed a brief rehearsal on the actual stage to get comfortable with the space and the piano. Lily's father guided her through the magnificent building, describing everything in detail: the soaring ceilings, the plush red seats, the enormous crystal chandeliers. "It smells like polish and perfume," Lily noted. "And it sounds big, like the notes could travel forever." When they reached the stage, a competition official introduced himself as Mr. Donovan and led Lily to the Steinway concert grand piano that would be used for performances. "This instrument is quite different from what you might be used to," he explained kindly. "Take your time to get acquainted with it." Lily's fingers explored the keyboard, testing the action, the resistance of the keys, the responsiveness. It was indeed different from Professor Wang's old grand piano, more precise, more powerful. She played a few scales, then parts of her competition pieces, making mental adjustments for the instrument's unique character. Mr. Donovan seemed impressed. "Most contestants take much longer to adapt," he remarked. "You have a natural feel for the instrument." "The piano talks to me," Lily replied with a small smile. "I just have to listen." That evening, they attended the competition's opening reception. The room buzzed with nervous energy as young musicians and their families mingled with judges, sponsors, and past winners. Lily clung to her mother's arm, feeling suddenly out of place among people who had likely been training at prestigious music schools for years. A young man approached them, introducing himself as Tom, another competitor in the youth division. "I heard you during rehearsal today," he said. "Your Bach was incredible. Where do you study?" "With Professor Wang in my hometown," Lily answered. "He's my only teacher." Tom sounded surprised. "Not a conservatory?" "Wow, that's unusual for this competition." Before Lily could respond, a hush fell over the room. The competition director was introducing the distinguished panel of judges. Last to be announced was Viktor Leonov, the renowned Russian pianist whose recordings Lily had studied for years. "Leonov is here?" Lily whispered to her mother. "Professor Wang says he's the greatest living interpreter of Chopin." "And our most demanding judge," Tom added quietly. "He rarely awards high scores. They say he once made a contestant cry just by raising his eyebrow during a performance." Later that night, in their hotel room, Lily's confidence wavered again. "Maybe we should go home," she said, pacing nervously. "Everyone else has been training at fancy schools with famous teachers." Her father, who had been quiet most of the day, finally spoke up. "Do you know why I believe in you, Lily? Because music isn't just something you do, it's how you see the world. Those other kids, they've been taught by the best, sure, but you've had to find your own way to the heart of the music. That's something special." Lily stopped pacing and turned toward his voice. "Do you really think so?" "I know so," he said firmly. "Now get some sleep. Tomorrow you show them what music really means." The next morning, Lily woke before her alarm. She went through her pieces mentally as her mother helped her dress and fix her hair. The competition gown felt strange, heavier and more formal than anything she'd worn before. "You look beautiful," her mother assured her. Like a real concert pianist. As they left the hotel, Professor Wang's final advice echoed in Lily's mind. "Remember, the greatest musicians don't just play notes, they tell stories." "Tell your story, Lily." At the competition hall, they were directed to a waiting room for contestants. The atmosphere was tense. Some musicians practicing silently on their laps, others pacing, a few sitting completely still with closed eyes. Lily found a quiet corner where she could focus. One by one, numbers were called, and contestants disappeared to the stage, returning with expressions of relief, disappointment, or careful neutrality. Lily tried not to think about the judges sitting out there, especially Victor Leonov with his legendary critical ear. Finally, her number was called. Her father squeezed her hand and whispered, "Remember, tell your story." A competition assistant guided her to the stage wings. "There are 5 steps up to the stage," she explained. "Then it's 15 steps to the piano. The bench is already positioned." Lily nodded, taking a deep breath. As she stepped onto the stage, the hushed audience seemed to hold its collective breath. She counted steps carefully, reached the piano, found the bench, and sat down. In that moment, before placing her hands on the keys, Lily realized something important. Regardless of what happened next, she had already achieved something remarkable. A girl from a small town who had never seen a sheet of music was about to play on one of the world's great stages. With that thought giving her courage, Lily Chen began to play. The moment Lily's fingers touched the keys, the world around her faded away. The hushed audience, the imposing hall, the panel of stern-faced judges all disappeared. There was only Lily and the piano speaking to each other in their private language of sound and color. She began with Bach's Prelude and Fugue in D minor. Her hands moved with precise confidence, building the intricate mathematical patterns that Bach had created centuries ago. To Lily, Bach had always felt like architecture, solid, structured, with a foundation that supported everything above it. Each note found its perfect place, creating a cathedral of sound. In the third row, a man with thinning gray hair and spectacles leaned forward slightly. Dr. Kenneth Mills, the head judge, was known for his scholarly approach to music. He'd written definitive books on Bach's keyboard works and rarely showed emotion during performances. But something in Lily's interpretation caught his attention, a subtle phrasing choice that highlighted a voice in the fugue often overlooked by performers. As Lily finished the Bach, there was a brief pause before she began Beethoven's Appassionata Sonata. This piece was a journey through emotional extremes, from quiet tension to thundering fury, from tender melancholy to triumphant resolution. Lily had always imagined Beethoven as a storm, powerful, unpredictable, capable of both destruction and cleansing renewal. Her small frame seemed to grow larger as she attacked the more forceful passages, her body swaying slightly with the music's momentum. During one particularly demanding section, a hairpin fell from her dark braid, but she played on, unaware of anything but the music flowing through her. In the judge's box, Victor Leonov sat with his arms crossed, his expression impossible to read. The Russian pianist was a legend, known for his technical perfection and unsentimental approach. At 62, he had performed on every major stage in the world and had become increasingly critical of younger musicians, whom he often dismissed as technically adequate but spiritually empty. When Lily began her final piece, Chopin's Ballad No. 1 in G minor, something in the atmosphere of the hall shifted. This piece told a story, beginning with a simple question, building through episodes of increasing drama, and ending in a whirlwind of emotion. It was considered one of the most challenging pieces in the piano repertoire, not just for its technical demands, but for the emotional maturity required to shape its narrative. Lily had connected with this piece from the first time Professor Wang had played it for her. "This music feels like my life," she had told him. Sometimes quiet and searching, sometimes stormy and confused, but always moving forward. As she played the opening bars, her face reflected a calm intensity. When the main theme emerged, her expression softened, as if greeting an old friend. During the development section, when the music grew more complex and turbulent, her unseeing eyes widened, living every twist in the musical story. The final coda of the ballade is famously difficult. a tornado of notes that requires not just technical skill, but courage and conviction. Many young pianists either rush through it in panic or slow down to manage the notes, losing the emotional thrust. Lily did neither. She rode the musical wave with absolute commitment, her fingers flying across the keys with precision while maintaining the emotional narrative to the very last note. When she struck the final chord, Lily remained motionless for a moment, her hands hovering above the keys, reluctant to break the spell. The audience, too, seemed frozen in time. No coughing, no shifting in seats, no whispers. Then, like a dam breaking, applause erupted throughout the hall. Lily stood, slightly disoriented by the wall of sound coming from the audience. She bowed in the direction she believed the audience to be, a slight smile on her face. As the applause continued, the competition assistant returned to guide her off stage. "That was amazing," the young woman whispered as she led Lily back to the waiting area. "I've never heard the ballade played like that." In the judges' room during the deliberation break, opinions were divided. Dr. Mills spoke first. Her Bach was revelatory. She found voices in the fugue that most performers miss entirely. Another judge, a French conservatory director, nodded. And her Beethoven had real power, though perhaps a bit too emotional in places. Victor Leonov had remained silent, making notes in his leather-bound notebook. Finally, he looked up. "The girl is blind, yes? This was not mentioned in the program. Does it matter?" Dr. Mills asked, raising an eyebrow. "Of course it matters," Leonov replied sharply. "It changes everything about how we must evaluate her performance." "I don't see why," the French judge interjected. "We judge what we hear, not the circumstances of the performer." Leonov tapped his pen against his notebook. "A blind performer cannot read music. She must learn everything by ear, like a parrot repeating phrases without understanding their meaning. It's a parlor trick, not musicianship." "That's absurdly unfair," Dr. Mills protested. "Many great musicians throughout history have played by ear." "Not at this level of repertoire," Leonov insisted. Bach's counterpoint? Chopin's complex harmonic structures? Without understanding the written language of music, it's impossible to truly comprehend these works. The debate continued, growing heated at times. Meanwhile, in the contestants' waiting area, Lily sat with her parents, her hands still trembling slightly from the adrenaline of performance. "You were wonderful," her mother kept saying, holding Lily's hand tightly. "Did you see the audience's reaction?" her father added. "Standing ovation. Even some of the other contestants were on their feet." Lily smiled but said little. She was experiencing the strange emptiness that often followed an intense performance, as if she had poured everything inside her into the music and now needed time to refill. Tom, the young man she'd met at the reception, approached their seats. "That was incredible," he said, genuine admiration in his voice. "Your Chopin especially. I've never heard anything like it." "Thank you," Lily replied softly. "How did your performance go?" "Fine, I guess. Technically clean, but after hearing you play," he trailed off. "Let's just say I'm rethinking everything I thought I knew about music." As competitors continued to perform throughout the day, buzz about Lily's playing spread through the hall. Music students whispered about her in the restrooms. Critics in attendance made notes for articles already forming in their minds. Even the normally stoic stage crew had been affected, with one stagehand admitting he'd teared up during her Chopin. Late in the afternoon, the finalists were announced. 10 names would be called from the 40 contestants, and those 10 would perform again the following day for the final prizes. Lily sat nervously between her parents as Mr. Donovan read the names alphabetically. "Lily Chen," he called, third on the list. Her mother squeezed her hand so hard it hurt, while her father let out a small whoop of joy before quickly composing himself. Lily felt dizzy with relief and excitement. She had made it to the finals of the Willard competition, something even Professor Wang had not dared to predict. As they left the hall that evening, planning to get dinner and rest before tomorrow's crucial performance, a competition staff member approached them. "Miss Chen, Mr. Leonov would like to speak with you if you have a moment." Lily froze. Victor Leonov, the legendary pianist whose recordings she had studied for years, wanted to speak with her. "Of course," she replied, her voice barely audible. They were led to a small practice room where Leonov was waiting. He spoke without preamble, his Russian accent thick but his English precise. Your playing was technically impressive for someone your age, he said. But I must ask, how do you learn these complex works without the ability to read the score? Lily's father tensed beside her, but she placed a calming hand on his arm. I learn by listening and feeling, she explained. Professor Wang plays sections for me and I absorb them. I also use a tactile notation system that helps me understand structure. Leonov made a dismissive sound. But the architecture of Bach, the harmonic innovations of Chopin, these require visual understanding of music theory. The relationships between notes on the page tell us what the composer intended. With all respect, Mr. Leonov, Lily said quietly, I believe music exists primarily in sound, not on paper. The notes are just symbols for the real thing, like how the word love is just a symbol for the actual feeling. Leonov was silent for a moment. Then he asked, Your Chopin ballade, how do you conceptualize its structure without seeing it laid out before you? I see it in colors and shapes, Lily replied. The opening is a deep blue question. The main theme is golden light. The development sections are swirling greens and purples, growing more intense as the piece progresses. The coda is bright red fire. Leonov's expression remained skeptical. A poetic description, but not a musical analysis. Perhaps it's both, Lily suggested with more confidence than she felt. We shall see tomorrow, Leonov said curtly. For the finals, I would like you to play Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3, first movement. Lily's father stepped forward. But that's not what she prepared for the finals. She's ready to play Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2. The rules allow judges to request alternative repertoire for finalists, Leonov stated flatly. I wish to hear how she handles Rachmaninoff. After he left, Lily's parents were furious. It's completely unfair. Her mother fumed. He's setting you up to fail. Rachmaninoff's Third is one of the most technically demanding concertos ever written. Professional pianists spend months preparing it. Lily stood very still, processing what had just happened. But I know that piece, she said slowly. Professor Wang and I worked on the first movement last summer. I haven't played it for months, but it's still in my fingers. Even so, her father argued, to perform it with just one night to prepare? It's a trap, Lily. Lily touched the piano in the practice room. Maybe, she said thoughtfully. Or maybe it's a chance to show what I can really do. She sat down at the piano. I need to practice. Could you ask if we can use this room for a few hours? Her parents exchanged worried glances, but they recognized the determined set of Lily's jaw. When she made up her mind, there was no changing it. I'll see what I can arrange, her father said. But promise me you won't stay too late. You need rest for tomorrow. As her parents left to speak with competition officials, Lily began to play the opening bars of Rachmaninoff's Third Concerto, calling the notes back from her memory. The famous piece was known as Rach 3 among pianists and had a reputation for its extraordinary difficulty. So you want to hear how a blind girl plays Rachmaninoff, Mr. Leonov? She whispered to herself as her fingers found their way through the complex patterns. Then that's exactly what I'll show you. Lily practiced until midnight, her fingers flying over the keys as she reconstructed Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto from memory. The practice room had grown cold, but she barely noticed. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she worked through the most challenging passages again and again. The concerto was a mountain of technical difficulties, thundering octaves, lightning-fast arpeggios, and complex rhythmic patterns that required absolute precision. But beyond the technical demands, it was the emotional depth of the piece that made it so challenging. Rachmaninoff had poured his Russian soul into every note, creating music that ranged from whispered intimacy to orchestral grandeur. That's enough, Lily, her father said gently, touching her shoulder. He had been sitting quietly in the corner for hours, occasionally offering encouragement but mostly just being present. You need to rest. Lily's fingers stilled on the keys. Just one more time through the cadenza, she pleaded. The cadenza, an extended solo passage near the end of the movement, was particularly demanding. You've played it perfectly the last 3 times, her father said. Your hands will remember tomorrow. Now they need rest. Reluctantly, Lily allowed herself to be led back to the hotel. Her mother had already gone ahead to prepare a late dinner from items she'd picked up at a nearby deli. As they ate, Lily was unusually quiet. Are you worried about tomorrow? Her mother asked. Lily shook her head. Not worried exactly. Just thinking about Mr. Leonov. Try not to let him get to you, her father advised. He's trying to throw you off balance. "That's not it," Lily said, picking at her sandwich. "I keep wondering why this matters so much to him. Why does he care how I learn music or whether I can read a score? There's something personal about it." Her parents had no answer for that. After dinner, Lily took a hot shower, hoping the water would ease the tension in her shoulders and back. As she got ready for bed, she could hear her parents whispering in the next room, their concern evident even if she couldn't make out the words. Sleep came fitfully. Lily drifted in and out of dreams where she was playing the concerto underwater, the notes floating away like bubbles before she could catch them. She woke before dawn, her mind immediately filled with music. Rather than fighting it, she sat up in bed and practiced silently, her fingers moving through the patterns on an imaginary keyboard. By the time her parents woke, Lily had already ordered breakfast from room service and was dressed in her competition outfit, a simple but elegant blue dress that her mother had chosen because it matched her eyes. "How do you feel?" her mother asked cautiously. "Ready," Lily replied with surprising calmness. "Whatever happens today, I'm going to play my best." At the competition hall, the atmosphere was even more charged than the day before. Only 10 finalists remained, and the stakes were higher. The audience had grown as word spread about the exceptional young performers, particularly the blind girl whose playing had moved listeners to tears. Backstage, the finalists waited nervously. Tom, who had also made it to the finals, paced back and forth muttering his music under his breath. An Asian girl sat perfectly still with her eyes closed, deep in concentration. A tall boy from Germany kept cracking his knuckles until an official asked him to stop. Lily sat with her hands folded in her lap, her face serene. Inside, her heart was racing, but years of performing had taught her to channel nerves into focus rather than panic. The finalists would perform in reverse order from their preliminary ranking, meaning the judges had placed Lily 4th among the 10. This was both good news and bad. It confirmed that her preliminary performance had impressed them, but it also meant higher expectations for today. When it was finally her turn, the competition director himself came to escort her to the stage. "The orchestra is ready for you," he said kindly. "The conductor has been informed about your situation and will follow your lead." For concerto performances, finalists would play with a professional orchestra rather than solo. This added another layer of complexity. Lily would need to coordinate with dozens of other musicians, led by a conductor she had never worked with before. As she was led onto the stage, the audience applauded warmly. Lily smiled in their direction and made her way to the grand piano at center stage. After she was seated, the conductor approached to briefly introduce himself. "I'll give you a 4-beat count-in," he explained quietly. "For tempo changes, I'll follow you. Don't worry about watching me, I'll be watching you." Lily nodded gratefully. She placed her hands on the keys, took a deep breath, and nodded to indicate she was ready. The orchestra began the concerto's famous opening, a gentle rocking motion in the strings that created a sense of anticipation. Lily listened intently, feeling the music's pulse. When it was time for the piano to enter, her fingers found the keys with absolute certainty. The opening theme of Rachmaninoff's Third is deceptively simple, a melody that unfolds gradually, like a Russian folk song. Lily played it with restrained emotion, allowing its natural beauty to speak for itself. As the movement progressed and grew more complex, she remained in perfect sync with the orchestra, her body swaying slightly as she leaned into the more passionate passages. In the judge's box, Victor Leonov watched with narrowed eyes, his pen poised over his notebook. Next to him, Dr. Mills observed both Lily and Leonov with interest. The first test came at a particularly difficult passage about 4 minutes into the piece, a series of rapid-fire chords that require both power and precision. Lily attacked them fearlessly, her small hand somehow spanning the demanding reaches. A barely perceptible nod from the conductor acknowledged her mastery of this challenge. Then came the development section, where Rachmaninoff takes his simple theme and transforms it through a series of increasingly complex variations. Here, Lily's interpretation became more personal. She brought out inner voices that are often lost in the texture, finding connections between melodic fragments that made the music structure clearer and more compelling. In the audience, a well-known music critic leaned toward his companion. "She's not just playing the notes," he whispered. "She's reimagining the architecture of the piece." As the movement built toward its climax, Lily seemed to grow physically larger at the piano, her presence filling the stage. The orchestra responded to her energy, matching her intensity. When they reached the cadenza, the extended solo passage that Lily had practiced so diligently the night before, the hall grew impossibly quiet. The cadenza of Rachmaninoff's Third is notorious for its difficulty. It begins with a simple statement of the theme, then gradually builds into a whirlwind of notes that requires the pianist to create the illusion of playing with 3 or 4 hands. Some pianists choose an easier alternative version, but Lily was playing Rachmaninoff's original, more demanding cadenza. Her fingers flew across the keyboard with such speed that they became a blur. Yet, even in the most technically challenging passages, every note was clear, every phrase shaped with intention. When she reached the climactic moment, a series of crashing chords that utilized the piano's full range. The sound was so massive, it seemed impossible that it came from one small girl. The cadenza builds to a moment where the orchestra rejoins for the final push to the movement's conclusion. The conductor, who had been watching Lily with growing amazement, brought the orchestra in precisely on cue. Together they drove the music to its powerful conclusion, a final statement of the theme that had begun so simply 20 minutes earlier. As the last chord resounded through the hall, there was a moment of complete silence. Then the audience erupted in applause and cheers. People rose to their feet spontaneously, not waiting for others to lead. Even some of the orchestra members, breaking protocol, tapped their bows against their instruments in a musician's sign of respect. Lily remained seated at the piano, slightly disoriented by the wall of sound coming from the audience. The conductor approached and gently took her hand, helping her to stand and acknowledge the applause. He leaned close to her ear. "That was one of the greatest performances of this piece I have ever heard," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Lily bowed in the direction of the audience, then toward the orchestra, and finally toward the judges' box. As she left the stage, the applause continued unabated. In the judges' room during the break, the conversation was animated. "Phenomenal control of the cadenza," one judge was saying. "Technical perfection without sacrificing musicality." "Her phrasing in the development section was revelatory," another added. "She found connections in the music that I've never heard before." Victor Leonov sat silently, his face unreadable. Finally, Dr. Mills turned to him directly. "Well, Victor, what did you think? Was that merely a parlor trick as well?" Leonov closed his notebook slowly. "She played all the correct notes," he conceded. "Oh, come now," the French judge scoffed. "She did far more than that, and you know it." "I need some air," Leonov said abruptly, rising from his chair. "Excuse me." He left the room quickly, avoiding the eyes of his fellow judges. Instead of heading outside as he'd indicated, he made his way through a back corridor that led to the practice rooms. Finding an empty one, he closed the door behind him and sat heavily on the piano bench. For several minutes, he sat in silence, staring at his hands that had played on the world's greatest stages, hands that were now stiffening with age and arthritis. Finally, he began to play slowly and softly, the main theme from Rachmaninoff's Third Concerto, the same theme Lily had just performed with such beauty. Meanwhile, in the contestants' waiting area, Lily was surrounded by her fellow finalists, all eager to congratulate her. "That was unbelievable," Tom said, shaking his head in amazement. "How did you even learn that piece?" "Most of us have been working on our concertos for months. I learned it last summer with my teacher," Lily explained. "We worked on it for about 6 weeks." "6 weeks?" another finalist exclaimed. "It took me a year to get comfortable with the Mozart concerto I just played." Lily's parents watched this scene with pride and a touch of amusement. Their daughter, who had often been isolated because of her difference, was now at the center of a group of talented musicians who respected her, not despite her blindness. But regardless of it, a competition official approached them. "Miss Chen, there's someone who would like to speak with you in private." Lily's father tensed, remembering the confrontation with Leonov the previous day. "Who is it?" he asked protectively. "Mr. Leonov," the official confirmed. "He's asked to meet with Lily in practice room 3. Lily's mother took her hand. "You don't have to go," she said quietly. "You've done what he challenged you to do and more." Lily thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No, I want to hear what he has to say." She turned to the official. "Could you take me to him, please?" Her parents exchanged worried glances but didn't protest. They had always tried to let Lily fight her own battles when she chose to. The official led her through the backstage area to a small practice room. When she opened the door, Lily could hear the soft sounds of a piano, someone playing a simple, melancholy Russian folk tune. The playing stopped abruptly. "Miss Chen," Leonov's voice acknowledged her presence. "Please come in." The practice room was quiet except for the lingering echo of the last notes Leonov had played. Lily stood just inside the doorway, waiting. She heard the piano bench creak as Leonov stood up. "Your performance was—" He paused, seeming to search for the right word. "Unexpected." Lily remained silent, unsure if this was meant as a compliment. "Please, sit down," Leonov said, his voice softer than before. Lily heard him pull over a chair, and the competition official gently guided her to it before leaving them alone. For a long moment, neither spoke. Lily could hear Leonov's breathing, slightly labored as if he were carrying a heavy weight. "I must ask you something," he finally said. "The cadenza. How did you manage those cross-hand passages? Your hands are small, yet you didn't simplify them as most pianists do." "I found a different fingering," Lily explained. "Professor Wang helped me work out a way to redistribute some of the notes between my hands." Leonov murmured. "Clever." Another long pause followed. "And the voicing in the development section, bringing out those inner melodies. Was that your teacher's idea as well?" "No," Lily said. "I heard those voices myself. They're like hidden conversations within the music. I wanted people to hear them." Leonov made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. "Hidden conversations. Yes, that's exactly right." His tone had changed, becoming less formal, more genuine. "Miss Chen, Lily, I owe you an apology." Lily tilted her head, surprised. "For what, Mr. Leonov?" "For underestimating you. For assuming that because you cannot see music, you cannot truly understand it." He sighed heavily. "It was arrogant and small-minded of me. But why did it matter so much to you?" Lily asked, the question that had kept her awake the night before. "Why was it important to prove I couldn't play Rachmaninoff?" The piano bench creaked again as Leonov sat down. His fingers played a few quiet notes, the opening theme of the concerto. "Because Rachmaninoff saved my life." He said so quietly that Lily had to lean forward to hear him. "I was 10 years old in Soviet Russia, a sickly boy with few friends. My mother was a cleaning woman at the Moscow Conservatory. One day, she took me to work with her because I was too ill for school. While she cleaned, I wandered into an empty practice room and found a piano." Leonov continued playing the theme softly as he spoke. "I had never touched a piano before, but something drew me to it. I began picking out melodies I had heard on the radio. Hours passed. I didn't even notice when the door opened and a professor found me there. Instead of scolding me, he sat down and played this concerto. I had never heard anything so beautiful. 'You have a gift,' he told me afterward. 'If you are willing to work harder than you've ever worked in your life, I will teach you.'" His playing stopped abruptly. "That professor gave me everything. Lessons, scores, recordings, even food when we had none at home. He believed music could transcend the grayness of Soviet life. He believed music could save a soul. And it did," Lily said softly. "Yes. But somewhere along the way, I became fixated on the technical aspects, the perfect execution, the precise following of the score. I began to believe that true musicianship required absolute adherence to what was written on the page." He played a few more notes, this time from the melancholy Russian folk tune Lily had heard when she entered. "When I heard you play yesterday, it disturbed me. How could someone who had never seen a score, never analyzed the harmonic structure on paper, play with such understanding?" "Because music isn't on the page," Lily said gently. "It's in the air, in the heart. The notes are just directions to help us find our way." Leonov was silent for so long that Lily wondered if he had somehow silently left the room. Finally, he spoke again. "My teacher used to say almost exactly that. I had forgotten." His voice sounded different, less certain, almost vulnerable. "Today, when you played the Rachmaninoff, I heard things I had never heard before, despite having performed it hundreds of times myself. You found colors I had forgotten were there." He moved from the bench and Lily heard him kneel beside her chair. When he spoke again, his voice was close and she could smell coffee and a faint scent of cologne. "Lily Chen, you have reminded an old man what music truly is. For that I am deeply grateful." Lily felt tears forming in her eyes. She reached out instinctively, finding Leonov's shoulder and giving it a gentle squeeze. "Thank you for giving me the chance to play the concerto," she said. "It's always been one of my favorite pieces." Later that afternoon, the final results were announced. The contestants and their families gathered in the main hall, tension thick in the air. Lily sat between her parents, holding their hands tightly. The competition director took the stage, thanking the sponsors, the orchestra, and the judges. Finally, he moved on to the awards. "Third prize goes to Tomas Alvarez," he announced. Tom, the friendly competitor who had been so impressed by Lily's playing, bounded onto the stage with a huge grin. "Second prize is awarded to Akiko Tanaka." The Japanese girl who had sat so still backstage received her award with a formal bow. "And the first prize of the Willard International Music Competition," the director paused dramatically, "goes to Lily Chen." The audience erupted in applause. Lily sat frozen in shock until her father nudged her gently. "That's you, sweetheart. You won." Guided by her father, Lily made her way to the stage. The applause grew even louder as she accepted the crystal trophy and the envelope containing a substantial cash prize and an offer to perform with 3 major orchestras. "Would you like to say a few words?" the director asked, bringing a microphone close. Lily nodded, suddenly nervous in a way she had never been while playing. "I want to thank my parents, who sacrificed so much to give me music," she began, her voice gaining strength as she continued. "Professor Wang, who taught me to hear the stories in every piece. Mrs. Lopez, who first showed me how to find my way around the keyboard." She paused, then added, "And Mr. Leonov, who challenged me to reach beyond what I thought was possible." From the judges' table, Leonov nodded slightly, a gesture she couldn't see but somehow sensed. After the ceremony, there was a reception with champagne for the adults and sparkling cider for the younger competitors. Lily was surrounded by well-wishers, competition officials, music critics, representatives from conservatories eager to offer her scholarships. "Yale would be honored to have you join our program," one admissions director told her. "Full scholarship, of course." "Juilliard can offer you the chance to study with the world's best teachers," another countered. Lily's head was spinning with possibilities she had never imagined. Her parents stood nearby, equally overwhelmed. Through the crowd, Dr. Mills appeared at Lily's side. "Congratulations, Miss Chen. Your victory was unanimous among the judges, something that almost never happens." "Thank you," Lily said, still trying to process everything. "It doesn't feel real yet." "I wanted to let you know that Mr. Leonov has made an unusual request," Dr. Mills continued. "He would like to offer you private master classes if you're interested. He rarely teaches anymore, so this is quite extraordinary." Before Lily could respond, another voice cut through the crowd.
"There she is, Lily!"
It was Professor Wang. Despite his age and the difficulty of travel, he had flown in that morning, arriving just in time to hear the final results. "Professor," Lily cried, recognizing his voice immediately. She reached out and he took her hands in his. "I knew you could do it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "From the first day you touched a piano, I knew you were special." As the celebration continued, a reporter from a classical music magazine approached Lily for an interview. "Your story is remarkable," she said. "Growing up in a small town, no formal conservatory training, and yet you've won the most prestigious youth competition in the country. What's your secret?" Lily thought for a moment. "I don't think there is a secret," she said. "I just listen, really listen, to what the music is trying to say, and then I try to say it as honestly as I can." "And what's next for you?" the reporter asked. "Juilliard, Curtis? A concert tour?" "I'm not sure yet," Lily admitted. "There are suddenly so many options." Later that night, back in their hotel room, Lily sat by the window while her parents discussed the various offers she'd received. The excitement of the day had left her both exhausted and too wired to sleep. "What do you think, Lily?" her mother finally asked. "It's your future. What do you want to do?" Lily turned from the window. "I want to play, of course, but I also want to teach someday, to help other kids like me who might not fit the traditional path." "You can do both," her father assured her. "After what you've accomplished today, you can do anything." As her parents continued talking, Lily let her fingers drum silently on the windowsill, playing an imaginary piano. Her thoughts drifted to the small upright piano back home where her journey had begun, to Mrs. Lopez's patient guidance, to Professor Wang's belief in her potential, and she thought of Victor Leonov, how his challenge had pushed her to discover strengths she hadn't known she possessed. His words echoed in her mind. "You have reminded an old man what music truly is." 6 months later, Lily Chen made her debut with the New York Philharmonic, performing Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto to a sold-out crowd. In the front row sat her parents, Professor Wang and Mrs. Lopez, who had made the journey despite her failing health, and in a box seat to the right of the stage sat Victor Leonov, watching intently as the blind girl who had changed his understanding of music took her place at the piano. Just before she began to play, Lily turned her face toward his box and smiled slightly, as if she could see him there. Leonov found himself smiling back, though he knew she couldn't see it. As the orchestra began the opening theme and Lily's fingers touched the keys, Leonov closed his eyes. For the first time in decades, he allowed himself to experience music not as a critic or a teacher, or even as a fellow performer, but simply as a listener, hearing the colors, feeling the textures, following the hidden conversations within the notes. And in that moment, both the blind girl and the famous pianist saw the same thing, the true heart of music, visible not to the eyes but to the soul.